Nigeria's central law-making body, where the race for principal officers in the two chambers of the Legislative Assembly is shaping up to provide stiff competition as usual, with the occasional torch of drama at some point down the line. Now, the most remarkable feature of the incoming 10th National Assembly, however, seems to be a radically changed composition of the Senate, where the floor will be dominated by first-time senators, with the highest number of freshman senators recorded since 2015. And now, Neda Imasuen was declared winner of the February 25th, 2023 senatorial election for Edo South District on the platform of Labour Party. And he joins us now to discuss the leadership race of the 10th Senate, as well as his own legislative agenda. Good to have you and welcome. And talking about the race for the Senate President in the 10th National Assembly, we have the likes of Senators Lawan Kalu, Jibrin Akpabio, Shomole Yari and Umahi. They're vying for the top job. What are your thoughts on this? They're regulars. And except for Shomole, of course, what do you make of this lineup of potential candidates?
First of all, thank you all for having me. Well, my thoughts are a very simple one. These eminent gentlemen you just mentioned are all eminently qualified to occupy that seat. But I also understand, learning from interaction so far of the conventions of the National Assembly, where newcomers like us don't seem to have the opportunity to occupy such an important position as the leadership of the Senate. And so the likes you just mentioned, many of whom are new timers, I don't know how the General Assembly will receive that. But given the fact that majority of us are newcomers, if we have the will, I think we can actually change this protocol and then vote in people that will feel qualified to occupy those seats, regardless of whether or not they are first-timer or not.
And speaking of that protocol to fulfill once the position has been taken, what is your legislative agenda? What are some specific points of addressing that you would like to take with you, especially for the people of Edo South, if you do get the seat?
Well, for me, the main core of my legislative agenda is good governance. And it might seem to be an all-phrase-catching word, but what I mean is that we need to propose legislations and see it through, legislations that will help the common man, the legislation that is going to be able to put food on the table for the people who are hungry, and you know that we have scores of those people today. Coming quickly to mind is this issue of palliative. Should the fuel subsidy be removed? And I've been thinking about that, and I'm saying to myself, what kind of palliative will it be if we have to hand over money to individuals that will not last them for the next 1 month or two? In my mind, one would have thought that we should be thinking of how to invest this money in massive public transportation, where people don't have to drive their cars, yet be able to move from one point to another without that much cost on them. These are the kind of things that I think we should be thinking about when I talk about good governance and good legislation.
Very good. Good governance and the will of the common man. But how accessible would you be to your constituents when work commences? Because, in past experiences, by the time people get into office, there's a vacuum between the led and those who are representing them at the House. So I'd like your thoughts on that.
Well, I think I'm going to be the first senator in my district to have his legislative offices in the 7 local governments that I represent. In other words, instead of having one big office in Benin City, I intend to have offices in each of the 7 local government headquarters, where I will also hire staff to run those offices and make it accessible and open to those constituents close to those offices, where they can go to register their complaints or whatever it is that they need me to address. And I also will make it a point of duty to visit these offices regularly, as my legislative agenda will allow me to. I will be accessible. I'm not going to change my phone number. We'll be having town hall meetings at regular intervals, and I will be listening to my constituents. It's not a situation where I tell them what they want. It's a situation where they tell me what they want, and see how I can, within the purview of the legislative privilege that I have, to accommodate what I can accommodate. Yes, I'll be very close to my constituent.
And just moving the conversation slightly sideways, the Labour Party, we know they have become somewhat of the more favored other party, so to speak. And how do you feel about their representation within the Senate as it is? Will it be something that is of concern to you, or would it be beneficial? How do you feel about the representation of Labor in the Senate?
Well, as you know, and I'm sure as many other people know, the Labour Party is the people-oriented party. We came into office through the privilege we have the privilege of having our constituent members voting for us en masse. And so we know their pains, and we know what it is that they want us to do. So coming to the National Assembly, we are not going to lose focus of these needs. We are going to actually agitate for them. We are going to force it through. We're going to do all that we can to make sure that these people, our dear Nigerians, that have gone through a lot these years of poverty, of neglect, of insecurity, of lack of housing, lack of transportation, of name it. The standard of living has gone down. The debt profile of this country is something that we are not proud of. So these are things that we're going to address, and these are things that touches the common man, and we are going to actually address them as a party. And I've, in my interaction with all my colleagues from other states who are Labour Party members, this is the view, and this is what we have, and this is what we're going to bring to the fore.
All right. In a related development, there were barely a handful of Labour representatives at the House of Assembly before the emergence of Peter Obi, and of course, we saw what happened, and of course, you're also a beneficiary of that movement. How would you sustain the momentum, knowing the expectations of people, and bearing in mind that some of the candidates in other parts of the country didn't actually do much electioneering before they got to where they are now? So how would you sustain that momentum, and of course providing effective opposition to policies being debated at the House?
First of all, may I correct the impression that most or some of the Labour Party candidates didn't really do much to campaign. I've heard this and I feel very pained by it, because that is not true. In my district, I would tell you that I was the most out there candidate that reached out to everyone. I went to every nook and cranny of my constituent, to places where when I got there, they told me that I was the first senatorial candidate to ever visit them. I did that. We didn't have the opportunity, for instance, to put our big billboards all over the places, because in places where we put them, they were pulled down, and we didn't have the power behind us. But we do have the power of the people behind us, and so we spoke to the people one-on-one on a daily basis, and we did everything we could to sell our agenda to them. So let me put that record straight. It is not true. And if you think that anyone is going to be a senator or a House of Rep members by not campaigning, you try it and you know that it's not going to be so true. But yes, what are we going to do as a party? We believe that the people power brought us here. Yes, Obi's wave, we cannot wish it away. Some of us indeed rode on the wave of Obi, yes. I'm not going to deny that at all, but it doesn't mean that we didn't take this message to the nook and crannies of our districts. Obi came to state capitals. He didn't go to the villages. And there are people in the villages who would never have heard of him have we not gone there to actually sell the message to them as well. So it is not what you really think. It is not what the opposition says. It's not what people who don't mean well say about us. But nonetheless, we are focused. We know our legislative agenda. We know why we're here. We know the people sent us here. We didn't have the power. We didn't have the wherewithal to manipulate elections. In most cases, our elections were even manipulated. But in spite of that, we still won. In places where, in my district, for instance, if election was allowed to go as it should have gone, I know that I would have been able to defeat my opponents better than I did on the 25th of February. So we are focused. We're going to do the work. We are going to represent the people. We will not let them down.
Very good. Now, still talking specifics here. Senator Lawan wants to retain his position as Senate President. Given a scorecard of his tenure as Senate President, can he achieve this, or there's a likelihood someone else will take over? I know you're a newcomer, but at least you've been following proceedings of where you will be legislating and having your contributions as well. So I'd like your thoughts on that. Will we see another Senate President on account of those coming in, or there's a likelihood he will retain his position?
Well, he's amongst others that want that position, and he has every right to also contest for the position. But I don't think it's an advantage that he's been there before, therefore people will line up behind him. This is a new Senate, is the 10th Senate. Like you know, every Senate is different from the other ones, we start de novo. We don't carry anything from the past. And so he has every right to contest. Will he win? I don't know. There's going to be voting, and this voting is going to be a secret voting. And if you're asking me to tell you where I will vote, I'm not going to tell you that, but I will tell you that I will be looking at each and every candidate very critically, many of whom have been speaking to us, asking us to vote for them. And we ask a very simple question: what are you going to do to lead us, to take us from where we are to where we want to be? Is those any of the candidates that can very well answer those questions that I would pitch my vote on?
Well, with the 9th Assembly on the way out and being helmed by Senate Majority Leader Yahya Abdullahi and the Senate Deputy Senate President Ovie Omoagege and the Senate President Ahmed Lawan, what is your opinion or your assessment on the gains and losses of the 9th Assembly as this 10th one is being ushered in?
Well, let me not speak actually of the 9th Assembly because I was not an active participant of that assembly. Well, I will talk about the 10th Assembly and what we need to bring to fore. I was speaking about it, and I'll continue to say that we are people-driven. It's going to be a people-driven 10th Assembly. For those I've interacted with since being in Abuja and listening to everyone and meetings and so on and so forth, I'm pleasantly surprised to see that across parties, senators are willing to change the narrative, to really focus on what we need as a country to heal and to move us forward. And so that I'm consoled by that. For the 9th Senate, like I said, I don't really want to talk about that. But of the 10th Senate, I'm just hoping that certain bills that that they have on ground will be signed by His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari before he leaves. And I'll make mention of one of those bills, which is the audit bill. The audit bill is very dear to my heart because I know what it's all about. And I believe that if that bill is considered and passed, it's going to help to at least reduce this wave of corruption that seems to have eaten deeply into our fabric. And if it's not signed, it's something, again, that I'm going to pick up. And I hope that I'll have the support of my colleagues to have this bill repositioned and have it signed by the incoming president.
Very good. I'm glad you also mentioned the audit bill and, of course, the issues of corruption, whether it's in the executive or the legislative arm or even in the judiciary. Now, let's talk about the issue of security votes. Over time, there's been intense scrutiny on its application and especially when it comes to what it's exactly meant to do for people out there. So I'd like your thoughts on this. It's been widely regarded as a slush funds for politicians to just use as they wish, as it were, on allegations bordering on that. But I'd like your thoughts on the issue of security votes and how you will also delve into issues like this to help the common man out there.
Well, for me, security votes also means the people's money. So if you are spending, if anyone has to spend the people's money, I believe that person ought to account for it. A situation where what is called the security vote is given and spent at will without any recourse to retirement, to retiring that fund, is worrisome. But again, each state house of assembly sits down in their own wisdom to come up with the security vote for their governors or for their states. And it beats me hollow to want to know why they vote such huge amount of money and not bothering to find out how it is spent. I also understand that there's this overbearing of the governors over their states houses of assembly, which is supposed to be an arm of government that ought to be on its own and to be to checkmate the other arms. But I don't think they are doing it. At the Senate, yes, why not? It's something that can be visited and looked at critically and see how these slush funds can be redirected to the benefits of the common man.
Very good. Now, several outgoing governors lost their bid to come into the Senate, especially during these elections. So do you think this is positive? How beneficial is that to the act of governance, as it were, at the legislative arm of government?
Well, it's about accountability. For me, if you have sat as a governor to superintend over your state and you want to come back, you should have a scorecard that the people will look at to want to return you back to your seat. When you don't come back to your seat, then it then means that you really don't have much to show for the 4 years that you sat there. So it's a good thing, it's a good development for our democracy, and I believe that it should be so in all arms of government, which what brings me now to the next topic, which is the efficacy of our elections. I don't think that elections, we need to strengthen our election procedures to such an extent that that people are not able to manipulate it to perpetuate themselves in power, even when the people are tired of them for non-performance. I think this is a new area that we need to focus on and to address it, because we need to deepen this democracy if we are going to be a country to be reckoned with by other countries in the world.
All right, and moving the conversation as we wrap things up here slightly, the Labour Party, we know that they have a long road of litigation ahead of them in terms of the electoral fallout from all the elections that have happened. Without going into detail, obviously, because these things are in court, are you under the impression that the terms under which the Labour Party has taken will make the road successful? And also, with the fractured nature of the polity right now, some things that the party can do in order to start with some reconciliation, or even yourself to start with some reconciliation?
Well, reconciliation is always very good. I mean, it's part of the healing that I spoke about earlier. We need to heal as a country. We need to heal as individuals, and but we must do that within the reckoning of justice. And that is, justice must not just be done, but it must be seen to be done. I have a friend who makes the analogy of a man who steals your bicycle, and he comes to apologize by riding the bicycle to your house, and after apologizing, he rides the bicycle out again, and every morning he comes by and waves to you and say he's sorry, but he doesn't return your bicycle. I don't know what kind of justice that is, but again, I'm not a judge, and I can't actually comment on what is before the courts. What I'm saying, what I'm hoping for, is that we should have justice, because it's the foundation of our democracy, is the foundation of a society, is the foundation of civilization. If we have justice that we all can depend and rely on, that we can always go to, and know that we're going to receive justice when we go there, this country will be better off today. And so it's a focus that all of us as Nigerians and as legislators will have to address at some point.
Very good. Finally, I'd like your expectations for the 10th Assembly and what needs to be done to uphold the people's wishes for governance at that level.
The 10th Assembly, the assemblage of the people of this 10th Assembly is very dynamic. We have people who are very energetic, people who are looking forward to change, people who really want to serve, people that have an idea in their minds of how this legislation, this 10th Assembly should look like. We all have our little thoughts, little minds in thinking about all these things, but the overall of it is to move this country forward, is to address the needs of the common man, is to address the needs of our economy, is to address the needs of our decay infrastructure, is to address the needs of insecurity, is to address the needs of youth restiveness, non-jobs and creation. Our economy is actually not doing optimally. It ought to be doing optimally. And so these are the things that most of us have in mind, and whichever way we can bring legislation to bear to this direction, we will, and to support other legislation in this direction as well. But I tell you something, the 10th Senate is going to be a Senate like no other, given the caliber and the driven mindedness of members that I've seen and I've interacted with across the country.
Well, Senator-elect Edo South of the Labour Party, Neda Imasuen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and having this conversation with us.